Hello and welcome to today's REDCap demo day. Today we will be covering user rights, user roles, and data access groups. My name is Chris Sorensen. This is being recorded on August 1st, 2025, and we are in REDCap version 15.0.22. For WashU REDCap users, I want to just remind you there's always helpful links at the top of the My Home page and on the left-hand menu of the My Projects page. There's also just-in-time videos and documentation embedded throughout REDCap. Be sure to use any and all support that you can find. I'd like to acknowledge my fellow REDCap administrator, Bas de Veer. I used his presentation while I was creating my own. He's a REDCap administrator at Wake Forest University, and if you have access to these slides, the link is located here. And I put this on here both to acknowledge Bas, but also to let all of the users know that even the REDCap administrators who spend all day in REDCap and try to learn as much as we can, we still rely on other administrators to learn new things and ensure that we are doing things correctly, things the way other people are doing it, or people have done a process before, and we learn from that. And so we all learn from each other here in REDCap. The agenda for today, I'll cover REDCap tiered access, our WashU REDCap user rights policy, and then I'll just give a high overview of user rights, user roles, data access groups, and what's called the DAG Switcher, and then we will go through demonstrations of each. Okay, so REDCap has a three-tiered access system. First of all, you can get global access, which here at WashU is an active WashU key. Once you have that, if WashU has trusted you enough to hire you, give you a WashU key, or you're an external user and you've obtained a guest key with a WashU sponsor, you can log in and have global access to REDCap. Once you first log in, you do not really have access to any projects, any data, anything like that. So you can either create your own project or be added to a project. And then even within projects, we define user rights for other users. And so this gives us a multi-layered data protection model that's similar to, you can think of it as the digital version of the multi-lock system. So here at WashU, we have the two-key system for paper documents that have PHI. For example, you must have it in a locked cabinet within a locked office. This obviously provides project protection. And it does also simplify for users who only have specific responsibilities on the project. So, for example, if you have busy clinical research nurses who are doing 20 other things and then they are entering data for a REDCap project, they don't need all the user rights. And when you give them less user rights, they don't have all the links and the buttons and everything else that shows up that somebody with highest level privileges has. And our policy is pretty simple. Basically, project access and user rights to individual projects are controlled by the study teams themselves or the users on the projects themselves. And we can only add or upgrade rights with direct permission from the PI. And if we're adding someone new, the PI has to give us a full list of of what rights the user needs. And if there's not a PI listed on the project, you have to send us the IRB to approval to prove who the PI is. And even if you are the PI, but there's nothing listed over here in this portion of your REDCap project, you will still have to prove to us that you are the PI of the project. Okay, and sometimes people get a little frustrated by that, but I'd much rather have somebody be a little frustrated about access to their own project than me adding someone to a project who's not supposed to be there. Most of the time, people are not trying to get added to projects or have their user rights increase because of, they're not trying to do bad things. They're not trying to damage the data. But what happens a lot of times is a user will reach out and say, I need to do this. Please give me these rights. And if we were to do that, sometimes a PI might reach back out and say, hey, this person was not supposed to have access to that part of the project. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. There are also, there can be times where people are trying to break in to do nefarious things. I think in REDCap, that's not generally what we're trying. I mean, we are trying to avoid it, but that's not usually what we see. We usually see people who are asking for upgrade rights because they need to do something specific in the project, but we just need to make sure that's okay. And we don't want to unblind somebody from a clinical trial or something like that. So there's all sorts of ways that if we don't know for sure that we can upgrade or add someone to a project, that we could give someone access to something they shouldn't have. And the only time that we are completely needed for adding someone to a project is if a user or multiple users with user rights privileges leaves the project or leaves the university, and you don't have anybody who can do that. At that point, you will need to reach out to us. And this all still holds true. We need permission from the PI, and if there's no PI listed, we'll need the IRB approval. All right. High-level overview of user rights. It allows the project creator or other users with user rights privileges to customize what other users can access and do in the project. I have a page linked here called User Rights Definitions. It's not necessarily easy reading, but anytime you are adding someone and you're unsure about what these rights do, please look at this page. This page has been reviewed by a REDCap training collaboration committee of other REDCap administrators from around the US and around the world. Some categories of user rights, something you don't see in this picture, are the highest level privileges. These are project setup, user rights, and data access groups. Project setup allows you to make actual changes to the project, like add a new field, delete a field, new instrument, things like that. User rights allows you to add people to the projects, and then data access groups, we'll go over those more in a few slides. There's a list of other privileges, which, as you see, is just kind of a mix of various modules and tools available in REDCap. So you'll determine when adding someone what they need there. Down here, you have project records, which is by default, everyone that you add has this create record. So you have to go in and uncheck that if you don't want them to be able. And then you have a rename records. And unfortunately, I cut off my screenshot a little small to see under here is delete records. Okay, so you have to determine what people can do as far as records. And just a note, as I mentioned earlier, if for someone outside of WashU, you can't just add them with their other institution's email address. They have to get a guest WashU key, and then they can be added to projects. Okay, in addition to the rights that we looked at there, there's data viewing and data exports rights. So over here on the right, I've got some instruments restricted where somebody can't see them at all, some where they have view edit rights, and some where they have data export rights. So looking at these names, it's kind of this person's restricted from things that might have PHI, and they're able to view, edit, and export the data that doesn't have PHI. And so each of these has 4 levels. pretty self-explanatory, no access. They just won't even see the instruments. They won't even really know that there's, whoops, sorry about that. They won't even know that there is a that instrument there. Read only allows them to see it, but not edit. This adds edit. And this allows you to edit survey responses, which be careful with this one. Certain times we use it, such as having a study team sign a consent form. So that's one time where that would be needed, but be careful giving this to people because that could be responses from a participant and you may not want to change those. Here again, no access to export certain instruments. You can choose de-identified, and note here the little star at divide or asterisk. It says this down here. It basically any free-form text will be removed, date, time, and identifier fields, fields that have been marked as identifiers. So this is kind of REDCap's default, like what might be an identifier. And then here, you can remove all fields that you have designated or someone in your project has designated for as identifier fields. So this one's a little more customized. This one's where REDCap's like going probably a little overboard, just not taking any text or notes fields and date fields and things like that. And then full data set means you can export anything from the specific instrument. So you might have here, this might be a data entry person or a data analyst that only needs to see the patient morale questionnaire and completion data. Okay, user roles, very similar to creating user rights for an individual user, but what you're doing is you create a specific role and then you can add people to that role so you don't need to specify user rights every single time. This is, it helps reduce errors because if you have to click all those buttons every time, it's easy to not give someone the correct rights or give them too many rights. However, in reverse, if you update the role rights, you update for every person in the role. So make sure that if you're saying, okay, research coordinator 1 needs more rights, make sure that all the other research coordinators in that role need those rights as well. And if somebody's maybe gotten a promotion and now they have more roles on the project, they can be removed from that REDCap role, and then you can update them individually. Data access group. So this is where you can assign a user on the project to a DAG, which is the short name for data access groups. Records created by user in a DAG automatically get assigned to that DAG. And then the specific user who's in that DAG can only see the records for that specific DAG. So the most common use I see for this is multi-site studies. I'm sure there's other times where this would be helpful, but in general, it's multi-site studies where only people from those sites can see the data of the people who are enrolled from those sites. And you can assign multiple user to multiple DAGs using the DAG Switcher, which is our last, oops, nope, sorry, two slides left. We'll get to the DAG Switcher in another slide. There is an unassigned group, and that you can actually see all data access groups if you're in there. Okay, so it's not unassigned. I can't see anything. It's unassigned. I can see everything. And new records created by people in the not assigned group, their records aren't automatically put in a DAG. So I'll show you how to manually put people in a DAG if you're in the unassigned group. And this is generally some sort of high-level project or data manager. It's, I'm getting a little outside of REDCap here and getting into data use agreements. But in general, with that sort of design, multi-site, they're trying to keep people at WashU from seeing, data from people enrolled at Texas or Utah. But there needs to be one person here. Okay, so that's something to consider if you're creating a data use agreement. Because if there's not somebody here, no one can add other users to DAGs. Okay, so somebody has to be here to be able to add users to DAG. So when you're doing a multi-site study and you're working on your data data use agreement, that's something you need to consider. You need to make sure there's at least one person who can somehow add people to DAGs. And if you have auto numbering turned on, the auto numbering is DAG specific. Okay, the DAG switcher is pretty simple. After you add somebody to a DAG, you can then assign them to multiple DAGs. And then that person gets a little switch button at the top so they can switch back and forth between whatever data access groups they're assigned to. And it's also important that they are assigned. You have to check the box on the actual DAG that they're assigned to. You can't just select the ones you want them to be able to switch to. Now, you don't have to select all of them. I could have just put, Texas and WashU or something like that. But here I assign this person where they could go to all of them. Okay, with that, I will switch over and do some demonstrations. Okay, so first I'll just show you the link that to Boss DeVere's page. This is actually something you'll be able to come in and look at if you'd like. It's more comprehensive than what I've gone over today. But just to give you an example, here is one of the images you saw in my presentation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just create a project. Let's say user rights, roles, DAGs. And I'll say it's practice just for fun. And I'm just going to use some type of template here so that I have some instruments. And maybe I'll just do basic demography. Yeah, single instrument is fine. Or actually, sorry, let's do one that has more. Let's do classic database and agree. Okay, so right now, when I create this project, I am the only user on the project. If I go to user rights on the left, so right here is user rights and DAGs is right next to it. I am the only user on the project. And I have what's called highest level privileges. So if I go in to edit my own rights, you'll see I have project setup user rights, data access groups, user rights, and data access groups. And then there are some that I have by default and some I don't have, but I can update my own user rights if needed. I can even restrict myself from things. Okay. I can also set an expiration date for myself or anybody else where their access to the project automatically expires. So if you've got summer students that'll only be for a certain time, you can expire theirs whenever their last day is or something like that. Then I can add other users. And what I'm going to do is just add an account that I use for testing purposes. And I'll say add with custom rights. I encourage you when you're practicing this on your own, use people who your colleagues within your labs, add them to the project. Please don't add the REDCap help desk one to your project. But when I add new people, by default, it gives them limited access. Okay, so here they don't have project design and setup. They don't have user rights or the ability to add other people, and they don't have data access group rights. I'm going to leave it this way for this person so you can see what happens when I give myself those rights or the rights of this person. I can choose whether they can create records, add records, delete records, and then I can restrict them from certain parts of the study. Okay, so I've got this add user or this new user on my project. Now, since I'm an administrator, I have a special power here where I can view the project with other user rights. So I can come in here and I can go REDCap help desk. And notice it says you don't have access to this page because I didn't give this person, this test account, I didn't give them user rights access. And you can see there's much fewer links over here. There's much fewer links here. I don't have the online designer. I don't have the data dictionary. I can access the code book, but I can't access anything else that would allow me to um, make changes to the project. Okay. Now, I'm giving this person record creation, but I hid them from the first project or for the first instrument. That's probably not going to work very well if it's someone who has to add users to the project. So I'm going to change. I'm going to go back in and go to my user rights. I switch back to myself there, and I'm going to update this so that they actually can view and edit the first, maybe export, and then maybe we'll say this person doesn't get to see completion data. Okay. So now if I go to the record status dashboard, if I change to this person, I can now add a record, and I can see all the instruments except the last, the completion data. Okay. Let me just go ahead and save this record so that it continues to exist in the project. It's telling me that I need to add stuff, but we'll just go ahead and ignore that. Okay, so we've got our record in the project, but when I'm using the restricted user rights, I cannot see all of these. And if I go into this record, I can't rename or delete it because I don't have those rights. So I would need to have my higher level users on my project that have higher level privileges come in and update my rights to be able to rename and delete records. So now if I go to the record status dashboard, change my user. Again, notice how one of the instruments went away. And now I can rename or delete the record. Okay, so user rights, they're pretty straightforward. Let me stop viewing as user. And again, you have the page, there's a link that has the user rights definition, but you can access that by opening any one of these links to our training materials. And it doesn't go directly to the user rights definitions, but it's right up here with it. So if you ever need kind of a long explanation of what a specific user rights is, you can come in here and you can look those up. Okay, so user roles, pretty similar process. Sorry, not add new record. Let's go to user rights. Here you can create a role, and I can say maybe data entry. And maybe we'll go ahead and use the default. We give access to everything here. I'll just say create this role. And now, if I have this person already in here, but I want them to be in this role, I can just click here, assign a role, select my role, and assign them. If this person wasn't already here, I could type in here, here. I could type my user in here instead of just adding my user. I can type in a username here, and then I can assign to a role that way. Okay. Now you can add as many users as you want to a specific role. Now let's say at some point my help desk person gets a promotion and all of a sudden they are doing these things. I can easily remove from the role. And it does tell me that right now they have the same privileges as the role, but I then can go in and update an individual user to have more access. without updating all the others within that role. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is data access groups. Now, as the project creator, I have access to the data access groups, but I'm going to say this person does not. They don't have any access to assign people to data access groups or to create data access groups. But if you do have those rights, you should see DAGs next to user rights. Go here. And you can see right now we're in the unassigned group by default, because that means we can see every record in the project. But let's say I'm collaborating. So you can see here, maybe I'm collaborating with Utah, collaborating with Texas, University of Utah, University of Texas. You can give these any names you want. They don't have to just be, it doesn't have to be Texas. I can have UT, but obviously that might get a little confusing if I have Utah, UT. But if you had if you were collaborating with Texas Tech, you could just do, T-Tech or something like that if you wanted to shorten it. But let's just stick for now with Texas. Okay. To assign a user, you can just select the user you want and then select the DAG that you want them to be in, and you can assign them. Okay, so let's see what happens here in the record status dashboard. So here I am as logged in as me, and I can see this. But if I switch to this person, can't see it anymore. Okay, that's because that record's not assigned to a data access group, and I'm only in the, can't remember if I was in the Texas or the Utah, Texas. I'm in the Texas one, and when I'm in the help desk. So stop viewing as a user. So as somebody who's unassigned, I can see all the different groups. Okay, so what I can do in here is go to this person's record. I can click, choose action for record, and I can assign this to Texas. Okay, now let me go back and use my test user. Okay, now I can see this person. Okay, see here, I can see this person because they're in the Texas one. And there's no drop down for the others because this user is in the Texas one, so they can't see the other ones. Whereas if I'm viewing as myself, I have a drop down where I can see all of them. Texas is the only one that has a record right now. So let me add a new record for Utah. And I'll just, again, I'll save and exit. Let's see. Oh, it didn't automatically add the person to that since I have no assignment. So let me go there. Now let me put this person in assigned to group, put them in Utah. Okay. So if I go to the record status dashboard, I can see those. Let me change to my test user, and I can only see one. Okay. So that, at its simplest form, is how data access groups work. That if a user is in a specific group, they can only see records in that specific group. And if someone in a group adds a new record, it automatically gets added to that specific record. Now, once I save this, I'll tell you something about the record ID. Notice here how it's 912-1. Okay, in my slides, I mentioned that the auto numbering is DAG specific. Just note that the other two records that were added, so now we've got this record 1 and we've got 912-1. This record was added before we had DAGs, and so that's why it didn't automatically, create it like that. So best to have your DAGs set up before you start enrolling participants. You can come back and manually change the name to make this one 9121-1 and this other one the -2. But we'll just leave these alone for now to go back and see the DAG switcher. So let me stop viewing as the other user. And now I'm going to go back to DAGs. And I'm going to say this person, this REDCap help desk user, can see, obviously they can see their own. I have to check their own if I'm going to be able to let them see other groups. And then this might not make sense with just 2, but let me just add another one. Let me add WashU, add group. So let's say there's 3 here, and for some reason, Texas and Utah have an agreement that this person can see both. Maybe not the most realistic way. Maybe sometimes, usually, maybe it would be, WashU allows some of the people to see ours. That's all dependent on data use agreement, who can see what from other universities. I'm going to just leave this one at Texas and Utah because that's where we have records. But let's go ahead and see what happens if I go to the record status dashboard. And right now I'm viewing this as myself, which I am unassigned, so I can see all the groups. But let me switch to my test user. Okay, so right now they're in Texas like they usually are. But if you see up here, they've got this switch. So they can switch to Utah. That's the only option they have. And now they can see that. Okay. Let me go back and just do the final touch. Let's add to WashU. I will switch back to my test record. It's going to tell me I can't be here. But if I go to my dashboard, if I switch, I can now switch to any of them. And you'll see that in WashU, we have no records. Let's see what happens when I create this. Since I'm in the WashU, let's do a save and exit. This one gets created in the WashU because I was in that at the time. Notice this is 9122-1. Let me switch to myself. Apologies if all this switching between different users is confusing. Just as a reminder, I'm an admin, so I can see different, I can use different users' user rights. Now notice here 9121-1, 9122-1. Okay, let's see, we've got Texas, and then we've got WashU. So why 9122 for WashU and 9121 for Texas? Because each time you create a group, it gets this auto-generated group ID number. So it's just putting this number at the front and a dash with what record number it actually is in the auto numbering. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and submit a ticket if you have questions. Click the REDCap Administrator button and it will automatically open a ticket for you. Please feel free to submit any questions. Thank you.